So this is the start of our backwoods. There's Bella. She has a frisbee. Yeah, that's what I said. And this is all owned by a private timber company. And you may be able to hear some of the logging operations in the background. And you can notice that there's a lot of leaf cover, and that's because this hasn't been cut, or has been cut. There's a lot of softwood, hardwood. So we'll take a walk up here and see if we can find something interesting. I'm trying to be Disa and walk very slowly, but I may not be able to. So this is for you, Disa. This is what we have left of our fall mushrooms and fungus. I don't know a lot about them. This old stump covered in moss. What got caught, but I wanted to just let you know that we've shifted forests a little bit. There's a lot more light coming through, and that's because most of this is the hardwoods, like beech and birch, and those are your colonizers after you've had a cut. They come in because they'll send up, once you cut them, their stump will send up runner shoots, unlike the softwoods like fir and hemlock and pine. When you cut those trees, they're done. These trees will regenerate, and that's why a big portion of New England, as I've said before, gets the beautiful fall colors, because a lot of it was cleared for pasture, especially for sheep, and these colonizers came back when those fields and pastures were left to their own devices. So you can see that some of the or most of the landscape, if you've watched Disa on her walk in Sweden, you'll notice with her there's a little bit more of a bog or taiga look to the landscape that you just don't see here. Of course, we're much further south. So, and there's a Bella waiting for us with her red frisbee. Get it, get it, you get it, you get it, bring it with you. So, she doesn't really like to move very far without that being thrown. So, the other thing you might notice about this particular landscape, and many of you may have this too, is there's a lot of rocks. And most of these have probably been uprooted because of the long history of logging here, but many of them could have been moved because of, at least in the state of Maine, Vermont, New England, were moved to create fields for haying and cultivation. Bring it with you, BB. Bring it with you. You get it. Okay, let's go. The other thing that's an interesting note, you can hear us walking through the leaves. There is a long-standing tradition of the native cultures being able to walk very quietly. And I remember as a child trying to do that in Maine. But what we have to remember is that the native culture 300, 400 years ago, even less than that, 200 years ago, didn't have all of this hardwood leaves. They had a lot of high pine forests that they cultivated for undergrowth that would bring in wildlife like deer. So they weren't walking on crunchy fall hardwood leaves all the time, which did enable them to be a bit more stealth when sneaking up on prey. So just a little interesting tidbit. So you can see she's on point. So this is one of the logging roads that we walk on from our house up to the Golden Road. And the Golden Road is a private road that's maintained by the timber company. And they believe it's called the Golden Road because either the amount of money that was made on hauling trees out of the state on this road was substantial, or it took so much money to build. So we're gonna walk up and get a view of the mountain. Here we are on the Golden Road, and I don't know if this camera will pick it up, but into the sun, and then the mountain is right there. It's got some cloud cover in it though. So, yeah. This landscape we're heading into would also be a great area for owls. Barred owls typically are what we hear, and we'll take a look and show you that as well. And my helper today wanted me to point out that we also see a lot of bear in this area. So bear and lynx and snowshoe hare, those are all animals that we come across in some way or another. Tracks, live encounters, and we also have a fair amount of moose activity. Mostly, I've seen more moose across the road than I have in this area, but we do see tracks, and my neighbor has had a moose in her yard, but don't really typically have many moose encounters up here. So, all right, so we'll go down to the spring. You may be able to hear some birds. So I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a little flock of chickadees. That was a black-capped chickadee I just had on the screen. I'm trying not to make you sick, but they're all over on this side now. That's the Maine state bird. There's also boreal chickadees, which are at higher elevations, and they have really pretty chestnut on their cheeks. So I thought I'd see if we could capture some of their calls. But they moved on. We're still heading down the snowmobile path. The chickadees are really social birds. They'll come in and hang out, and you can call them in sometimes with a little whispering call. So, but you can, if I'm going to pan to the left, to the right here, but you can start to see that we're moving from the open understory of the hardwoods to a more covered story of the softwoods in there. So things are getting thicker as we move into the cedar swamp and the hemlock swamp down further. So you can see where lights completely change, everything's darker, things are a little bit more boggy and wet. I'm standing on the snowmobile bridge so they can cross these wet areas. These nice big old trees. So this area hasn't been cut, and there are restrictions about cutting in wetlands, which is one of the reasons that this one has been maintained with all these big hemlock trees. And this is where we came from. And we've kind of descended down the hill. And I hear lots of chickadees. There's some beautiful kind of old growth, mossy, covered branches and lots of ferns in this wetland. You can kind of see the bog there. And this water stays open for the winter because I think it's spring fed. And so that attracts a lot of animals. Animals in the winter need to find water. Eating snow isn't always an option because that can, you have to eat a lot of more snow than you would drink water in its liquid form, and that can cool your body temperature down. So finding open water is really important for winter, active winter animals, or winter animals that are out and about. You know, hibernators and those that go dormant don't worry about it so much, but you know, deer, coyote, bear, not bear, bobcat, hares, that type of thing. They have to be really mindful. Birds as well. You know, the chickadees, the finches, redpolls, those little types of songbirds that participate in the winters here, they also need water. So this looks a little bit more like walking with Disa. It's not quite so open, but it's a little bit more wet and boggy. Ooh, here's some interesting lichens. Those are soldier lichen. You see the red, I don't know what that would be called, the red blossoms on it, blooms. Ooh, that's a red squirrel who's not happy that we're here. But, so this is a hemlock forest, and you can feel a little bit of a temperature drop. We've dropped down a little bit in elevation, and sun doesn't quite get into the forest floor, so you have a lot of the lichens and the mushrooms. And just take a little pan over. You can see the understory here is very different than the transitional forest or the hardwood forest that we saw earlier. Not quite so many leaves, and there's a lot more green. There's a lot of spruce back here, and hemlock. So I don't know if you can see that, but that bright light ahead of us is, we're now going to transition into a cut. This was cut last year. It's fresh, and was a little bit sad for Rob and I to lose a portion of our WoodsWalk. It does open up habitat to a variety of different animals, so we tried to look at the positive side, but to lose some gorgeous woodland for walking, which nobody else tends to use, was a bit of a bummer. Here's another little stream, which stays somewhat open in the winter. These little spring-fed. There's the snowmobile bridge and BB. So they're great to have around if you are an animal watcher. So we'll walk up and take a look at the cut. We made it through the boggy bit. Which is amazing after all that rain. So here you can really see the difference in the cut, the timber line, or the kind of the line, everybody's the same age. That's one way to look at a forest, is to look at the size and try to assess the age of most of the trees, and that can give you an indication of if there was a cut or if it was a plantation, but these are skidder roads. So these are the roads that they take the skidders and they haul stuff out. You can see all that slash there in the center here. There's some really big slash piles up the way. But like I said, it does open up fairly good lynx habitat, because everything's open for the bunnies like to get in at certain levels, and they eat where the snow piles up. They'll eat that at that level. So bring it with you, BB. Bring it with you. You get it. But it is still, there is something somewhat aesthetically pleasing about it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but we'll see if we can find some of those slash piles. And just up around this corner. Bring it with you. Yeah. Whoa, that just went by my ear. So here's what a yard would look like too. So this is where they would haul everything that they're gonna cut or that they've cut and they're going to take out, and where they clean it, which is why you get the big piles of flash. And I'm going to try to support my arm. Here's a nice big skidder road. And then up to the yard. So this used to be all forested. But you can see how rocky the ground is. You can also see what a mess those skidders make of the woods. There are still, ooh, there's some little juncos. Where are you, buddy? Those are slate-colored juncos. My little helper, so helpful, just found a moose track for us. Just right there, you can see the two dew claws. Kind of. Can you point the dew claws out, honey? Yeah, there's the dew claws. It's the hind part of the hoof, and then it's walking in the direction that he was pointing at. Those half mitts were his very own knitting project. So.